All right, so good evening, class, and welcome to our performance management class. Today, we are taking the topic absorption costing and activity-based costing. So I will just write the topic on the board now. This is performance management. So the topic again is absorption costing and activity-based costing. All right. We'll solve a question, and I will use that question to explain what absorption costing is and activity-based costing. Now, first of all, I will need to tell you that absorption costing is also known as traditional costing. This is because absorption costing was first introduced before activity-based costing, which is also called the modern costing. But people still use absorption costing, despite the fact that activity-based costing is newer and seems to provide a better solution. This is because absorption cost less stressful than activity-based costing. Now let's look at the two, because in the exam, you'll be asked to do the two. We'll look at a past question now. This is November 2024 question. That's question number 2. Now this is the last diet question, right? Because we are preparing for May 2025. Now, November 2024, question 2. Look at the question now. It says, Okekedem Nigeria Limited is considering the use of activity-based costing. So here it is considering, meaning that it has not started using it. It's considering ABC costing approach in its overhead recovery. Overhead recovery. The company manufactures 2 products known as alpha and beta. Details for the production of the 2 products are given below. We see that of alpha and beta. This is the annual production in units. This is the direct labor time per unit in hours, number of special parts per unit, number of setup per batch, number of sales invoice issued per year, number of separate materials issued per batch, batch size units. The analysis of the overhead provided the following information. Now look at the analysis for the overhead. The overhead are segmented into 5 parts, which are setup costs, special parts handling costs, customer invoicing, material handling, other overheads. Now these are their respective costs. Now look at what drive the costs. Setup costs. For you to incur setup costs, you must do some setups. And so the number of setups you do determine how much setup cost you will incur. Now, special parts handling. The number of parts you handle will determine how much on special parts handling. Will determine customer invoicing cost. Material handling. Number of material batches you have, you will drive the material handling. Then other overheads, we use labor hours. Now, required, use the traditional approach. Now, the traditional approach I mentioned is absorption. Absorption. To determine the direct, to look at what I'm determining the direct labor hourly rate for the company. What is the direct labor hourly rate for the company? That's number one. Number two, use the direct labor hourly rate to compute the overhead rates. Overhead rates. Overhead rates that is attributable to a 1 unit of alpha and 1 unit of beta. Now, that's the A part. The B part, determine the cost driver rate using the ABC approach. B2, compute the overhead rate per unit of each product using the ABC approach. Now, we are also told in C that if the unit material and labor cost for the product are as shown below, determine their unit selling price, where the company adhere to a policy of 20%. So now we are asked to determine their unit selling prices, where the company, just a moment, the unit selling prices, where the company adhere to the policy of 20% profit margin using the 2 overhead absorption methods. 2 overhead absorption method. Can you mute, please? I can hear noise from your end. Please, can you mute? I'll need you to mute. Only when you have a question to ask, you can unmute. And please also put your video off. So that it's fine. Please only talk when you are having something to ask.
Okay.
All right. I'm finding it difficult to off your video. Okay, I've stopped your video and I've muted you. All right, so I've muted you now. Only unmute when you have something to say. Now let's talk about activity-based costing and absorption costing. Now, absorption costing and activity-based costing are 2 different methods that is used to determine overhead costs. So you want to determine the total cost of a product. What you need is you need to know the direct cost of the product and the overhead cost of the product. The direct cost of the product will be the material cost and the labor cost. Now, these are the direct costs because they are directly traceable to the final product. When we say directly traceable, it means that if you look at the product, you can feel the material, you can feel the labor. Let's look at bread, for example. The flour, the butter, the egg, and every other thing used in making bread can be seen in the final product. So if you eat a bread that is having butter and a bread without butter, you will know because these are directly traceable to the product. Now the labor is also traceable to the product. A bread that is badly made and a bread that is well made. The difference is the labor. Now the overhead, you cannot trace the overhead to the product. For example, if your factory has state-of-the-art burners, you have air condition in your offices, you use the factory you are using is very superb. You want to charge it on the product, but you cannot feel it. If somebody were to stay in his house and make the same bread with the same quality of labor and material, you cannot trace whether this is coming from the kitchen-made oven or factory-made oven. And so they are not traceable, directly traceable, but we'll still find a way of allocating those costs to the product. That's why you see people who are selling in big shops, their cost is more than somebody who is selling on the road. You cannot buy a charger, phone charger, at the same cost with people selling on the road compared to people selling in a standard shop. All the overheads will have to be added one way or the other. And so the activity-based costing and the ABC are ways in which we try to account for the overheads. All right, so the absorption costing uses something called overhead absorption rate. We call it OAR, overhead absorption rate. This is what it's overhead rate here, overhead absorption rate. That is what it uses mostly to find its overhead. Whereas ABC uses something called cost driver rate. Cost driver rate, CDR. Both of them are mainly the same thing, the same way of calculating, but with slight difference. Now, overhead absorption rate uses labor hours only, whereas CDR uses the cost drivers. In the case of these, there are 5 cost drivers. It uses the cost drivers, as we shall see. Now let's look at the first question. We are asked to use the traditional approach to determine the direct labor hourly rates. Direct labor hourly rates. All right. Direct labor hourly rate. So what we're going to do now is direct labor hourly rates. All right. So we are asked to look for, what's the name of the company again? Let's check it out. Okeke Dem Nigeria Limited. Okeke Dem Nigeria Limited. The A1, we are asked to do what? We're asked to find direct labor hourly rate for the company. Direct labor hourly rates for company using absorption costing method. Now, direct labor hourly rates. So as its name implies, I will call it direct labor hourly rates. That is what this my symbol here is the same thing as total overhead. Hence, for the, will see me write OH as overhead all over total labor hours. Henceforth, you will see me writing LH. Right, so what is your overhead, total overhead? Let's pick them. Let's add all of these together. This is your total overheads. So let's add them together now. Yeah. Our calculator. Sorry. Need to shrink it. All right. So let's calculate it. All right. So it is now a sizable portion. We have 2,928,000 plus 2,400,000 plus 1,160,000 plus 2,520,000 plus 4,320,000. That gives us some 13,328,000. 13,328,000. So let's write it down. That's 13,328,000. So put it here. 13,328,000. So this is the total overhead. What about the labor hours? What is the labor hours we have here? We look at labor hours per unit. Okay, this is the labor time per unit in hours. So labor hours per unit, it means in 1 unit, you spend 20 hours and you have alpha. So what we'll do here, we will say open a bracket for alpha. We have 20 hours for 1 unit. Then we are doing 120,000 units. So when you multiply for 1 unit with 120,000 units, you know how much hours you've gotten here. Plus the second one, we are taking 25 hours for 1 unit. You're taking 120. So this is 25 times 120,000 all over. Let's calculate this. 20 times 120,000. That will give us 2.4 million. So we have our 2.4 here. And this should be like 2.5. Let's see. 25 multiplied by 120. Oh, that's 3 million. So let's have our 3 million here. So if you add them together, this is 328,000. 2.4 plus 3 million is 5.4. 5.4 million. So when you do the maths, let's do it together. 328,000 divided by 5,400,000. It gives us 2.47, approximately 2.47. So this is 2.47. So 2 naira 47 kobo per direct labor hours. And that's the answer to that question. We are asked to find direct labor hour rates for the company using absorption costing. So this is the direct labor hour rates for each product for the company. All right, so when you do that, the question is also saying, use the direct labor hour rates to compute the overhead rate attributable to 1 unit of alpha and beta. All right. So what we'll do now is we will say this is A2. What are we asked to find? Overhead rate per unit. Overhead rate per unit of each product. So this is what's the product name? Alpha and beta. Alpha farm, bear, term. So we have our direct labor hour rates. This is 2.47. Same thing here, 2.47. Then this is direct labor hours per unit. So how many hours does it take for 1 unit? We are told here this is direct labor hours per unit. This is 20, this is 25. So this is 20 and this is 25. So you multiply. So what you get now is the overhead rates per unit. That is what you get. Now, although we have 2.7 here, if you look at our calculator, it is not exactly 2.7. So I would like you to use everything in your calculator. Everything like this in your calculator. Instead of just writing just 2.7, if you put only 2.7 times 20, it's going to give you something higher, but you're still going to be correct. But if you want to be absolutely correct, use what you have in your calculator as it is. So just multiply it by 20. It gives you 49.36. So I'll write it. 49.36. 49.36. I can come here and reset. Let me just divide by 20 back so that I go. Now look at the original figure we had, 2.47. Now let me multiply it by 25. 61.70. 61.70. Right? So let's write it. 61.70. Now that's the answer to B2. We go again. A2 rather. So we have done that now using absorption costing. Now we are going to determine the cost driver rates using ABC approach. Cost driver rates using ABC approach. So B1, cost driver rates ABC. So your cost driver rate is the same thing as overhead. Okay, I said I'll be using OH for overhead. Overhead for each driver all over number of activity for each driver. Okay, so we will now say, what is the first driver we have? The first driver is setup costs. So we'll say CDR, set up costs. Okay, I will say CDR per setup. Say CDR per setup. Per setup is going to be cost. Okay, total setup costs all over number of setups. Total setup cost is 2928. 2928. Number of setups. What is the number of setups? Now we'll go here. Look at setup. Number of setups per batch. In one batch, there are 10 setups. In one batch, there are 10 setups. Now, this is what they said, batch size units. Now, when they say batch, let me give you an example of what we mean by batch size. Let's look at batch size as crate size. How many crates, how many drinks, or how many minerals is a crate of Coke going to contain? Perhaps 24. So if they say one crate size is 24 drinks, that is the crate size or the batch size. Assuming we have 240 products, 240 drinks to pack, how many crates do we need? 24 in one crate, 24 in one crate. You want to pack 240, you will simply say 240, which is the total, divided by 24 per crate. That will give you the number of crates. In the same light, we want to know the number of batch here. It was not given. Number of batch. So I will say for alpha, it will be 120,000 divided by 10,000. So is this 120 divided by this 10? For beta, it will be 120 divided by 50. That is the batch size. So if we are to do that first, we know here that 120,000 divided by 10,000, it means we have 12 batch. So it means that it's like saying 12 crates. So let me use a different color here. It's like saying 12 crates. So this is like 12 crates. And let's do the second one here. 120,000 divided by 50 in one crate. We will need 2,400 crates. So let's write it. So this will be 2,400. Now that we know the number of batch size, we know the batch size. Let's see. Now we are told that our setup cost depends on number of setups. Number of setups also depends on batch. So how many setups do we need here? So number of setups, what do we do? This is our denominator. So you will say this is alpha, and this is beta. So, and this is the total here. So, CDR per setup, we already have 2,928,000. Okay, so this is setup costs. Setup costs, right? Then number of setup. Now let's see. Number of setup. Number of setups per batch is 10 here per batch. So this is 10 in one batch. And how many batch do we need? We need 12 batch. In one batch, see now, one batch contains 10,000, right? For us to contain this whole 120,000, we need 12 batch. And this is just 10 setup in one batch. We're going to multiply this 10 by these 12 batches. So this is times 12. That's here. For beta, it's going to give you one setup is 30 per batch. So 30 times 2004. 30 times 2,400. So what would that give us? 10 times 12 is probably 120. So we'll write our 120 here. So this is like 120 plus 30 times 2,400. That will give you 72,000. 72,000. So we'll write it here. 72,000. When you add them together, you are having 72,120. So that's what we have here. 72,120. So when you do the maths, this numerator divided by denominator, so the cost driver rate per setup is, let's do it together now, 2,928,000 divided by 72,120. That will give me 40.599, which is 40.60. 40.60. So this is 40.60. That's the setup. The next one will be special parts to be cost driver rates per special parts. Okay, so what is the cost for the special parts? It's going to be 2,400,000. So this is special parts cost, 2,400,000. Number of special parts. What is the number of special parts? Now, this is number of special parts in 1 unit. In 1 unit, you have 10 special parts. And the other one is 40 special parts. 10 versus 40. So in alpha, you have 10. Here, you have 40. Is that the case? Yes, 40. Now, number of units. If this is just the special part in 1, how many do we have in 120,000? And if we have 40 in 1 here, what do we have in 120,000? That's what we are looking for. So this is going to be 10 times 120,000. This is going to be 40 times 120,000. So this is going to be 1,200,000 plus 4,800,000. So if you add them together, you are going to get 6 million. So this is going to be like 6 million. So the CDR per special part is going to give us 2,400,000 divided by 6 million. So let's do it here. 2,400,000 divided by 6 million, 0.4. So it means that it is 0.40 per special parts. The next one, it is customer invoicing. CDR per customer invoice. We know the cost. What is the cost here? 160,000. Number of invoices. Let's check. Number of invoices. You look at it here. Number of sales invoice issued per year. So this is 500. This is 24. It's as it is, 500 and 24. So you will say 500 plus 24. That will give you 2,900. So this is easy. CDR per customer or per invoice is equal to 1160 divided by 2,900. And what would that be? One 160,000 divided by 29. That will give you 400. Right, so that's 400 per invoice. Okay, the next one will now be material handling costs. material. It is cost driver rate. Cost driver rate per material handling. So cost driver per material handling. So the cost is what? 2520. 2520,000. Number of materials. So this is number of separate materials issued in one batch. So in one batch, we have 10 and 10. Okay, one batch has 10 materials. So you simply say 10 in one batch multiplied by 12 batches here, multiplied by 12, plus the other one is 10 in one batch multiplied by 24. This is 10 in one batch multiplied by 24. So this is going to be like 120. It is going to be 224,000. So when you add them together to give you 24,120. So therefore, CDR per number of material going to give you 2520,000 divided by 24,120. So let's look at it now. 2520,000 divided by 24,120. That will give me 104.48. So this is basically 104.48 per number of material. Then we come to the last one in this question. CDR labor hours. Overhead is labor. So we have 4,320. So costs 4,320. Labor hours. We've calculated that before when we did the first one here. Labor hours, total labor hours. We have it as 5,400,000. So we'll take that we've calculated, 5,400,000. Right? So we will now divide 4,320,000 divided by 5,400,000. 0.8. I will give you 0.8 per labor hours. So that's how we get to find this particular answer to this question. No wonder it is giving 9 marks. 9 marks. Unlike the other ones, this is 1 mark, this is 2 marks. This is 9 marks. Now, compute the overhead rate per unit of each product using the ABC approach. Compute the overhead rate per unit of each product using the ABC approach. All right. So let's look at the ABC approach. So that's C. Is it C? Okay, B2. B2. Overhead rates per unit. Okay. Right. So the thing to do here is B2. So we'll come here. This is overhead rates per units ABC. So this is beta. This is alpha. And I'll come here. This is C D CDR. And this is the cost driver or activity. So the first one here is going to be number of setups. Let me just put setup. What's the CDR? The CDR here, we calculated it as 40.60. 40.60. 40.60. How many setups do we have for A? Okay, for A, we have 120. And for B, we have 72,000. 120 and 72. 120. And this is 72,000. Okay. So what you do now is you multiply this by each of these. So setup costs, you just multiply 40.60 40.6 multiplied by 120. That should give me 4872. So this is 4872. Let me box it. 40.6 times 70. 40.6 times 72 rather. 72,000. 2,923,200. 2,923,200. 2,923,200. 2, 3, 200. Okay. If you were to add these two, together, let's add this with 4872. We are to get approximately 2928072, which is we'll be doing something here. 2928. This is 292872. So we are going to remove that 72 so that our answer will look perfect. We're going to remove that 72. This is rounding error because of rounding when we did the approximation. So we're going to take it like this. Then the next one would be special parts. Special parts. Special parts. What's the CDR for special parts? The CDR for special parts is 0.4. So we'll take it 0.40, 0.40. Now multiplied by how many special parts do we have for A and for B? Special parts, this is 1, 2, this is 4, 8. Zero, 1, 8 or 4, 8. We have 4, 8. So when you multiply 0.4 times 1, 2, that will give me 480. So that will give me 480. Let's box it because we need all these ones in boxes. Then we have 0.4 multiplied by 4,800,000. 1920. We're to add this to this. We're to add this to 480. We're going to get the 24, which is the total cost. All right, the next one is customer invoicing. Customer invoicing. So, customer invoice. What is the CDR? Customer invoice. CDR is 400 and it's 500 versus 24. This is 400 here. 500, 24. So 4 times 5 is 20. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's 200,000. Let's do this. 400 multiplied by 24. 960. That's 960. You probably add this to give me 1 million. Let's just add it to 200. 1160. 1160, which is probably what we have here. 1160. Material cost handling. Material cost handling. What's the 104.48? 104.48. Material handling now. 120 and 224,000. 120, 24,000. So let's multiply 104.48 times 120. Let's write this. 12,537.6 or 12,538. 12,538. Nearest whole number. The other one is 104.48 multiplied by 24,000. 2,507,520. Okay. So what was the cost like? We're going to throw away something. This plus 12,538. That will give me 2,520,058. We're going to remove something, 058. 2,520. We're going to remove something now. The 58 is going to go. So this, instead of 38, we have 0, 0. Instead of 20, we have 0, 0. All right. So it's give you 2, 6, 9 or 2, 6. Let's see what it's going to give us. 2, 5, 20. Let's add them together. All right, to remove 12,500 and I remove 2,507,500. 58. So I take the 20 here and the 38 is fine. And that goes. So let's check 12,500 plus 2,507,500. 2,520. That's wrong. Okay, that's correct. 2,520. That's correct. Then other materials is labor hours. Other material. For labor hours, we have 0.8. 0.80. So that will be 0.8 multiplied by, what's the labor hours here? We did it in the first instance, which we took straight. Labor hours. Two, 4, 3 billion. So this is 2, 4. This is 3 billion. All right. So let's check. Zero 0.8 multiplied by 2, 4. Now give me 1920. One 920. Then here 8 16 24. This will give me 2400. So 24, sorry. 24 plus 1920. Let's see. Plus 24. 4320. Which is in line with this 4320. All right, now that we've got it now, we'll say total overhead costs. So let's do it here. Let's start. Take them here. Start from the beginning. We have 48 plus 480. These are all the ones I boxed, plus 200. The next one, $12,500 plus $12,500 plus 1920. 2617,300. 2617,300. So 2617,300. Let's do this on straight. Divided by total units. It's 120,000 units. So this is overhead costs per unit. So I'm going to divide this by 120. 21.81. So this is going to give me 21.81. So let's do the second one. So we have 2923,200 plus 192,000. Okay, sorry, 1920. Okay, plus 960,000 plus 2507,500 sorry, then we have 24 plus 24 10 7 10 700. Ten, 7 10 700 divided by 120. So divide this by 120. That will give me 89.26. $89.26. Now, if you check these costs and this, it should give you the total cost. Let's check. 2617,300 plus 10,710,700 gives you 13,328. And I think we derived it 13,328 here. 13,328, that's what we derived. So that makes our answer here to be correct. All right, so we now look at if the material and labor costs for the product are as shown below, determine their unit selling price. Determine their unit selling price. So here we are saying this is the material costs and the labor costs. Now we are asked to determine their unit selling price. So now let's look at it now. What's this? Number C. C, unit selling price. Profit margin is 30%. According to the question, 20%. 20%. So this is what we are going to look at. Now, what is profit margin? Profit margin which I call PM, is profit all over sales times 100%. Now, we can simply just say profit over sales, which I will say equals to profit over sales. Now, what is our profit? Our profit is simply sales minus cost. Okay? our profit is simply sales minus cost. And our sales remains sales. Now we are told that our profit margin is 20%, which means that sales minus cost all over sales is equal to 0.2. Now let me rewrite it. Let's take sales to be S. S minus C all over S is equal to 0.2 over 1, right? Then we'll cross multiply. Let's cross multiply. Cross multiply means take this and multiply this, take this and multiply this. So this is going to be S minus C multiplied by 1 equal to, which is this, S multiplied by 0.2. So anything multiplied by 1, it is the same thing. So this is going to be S minus C equal to 0.2S. Now let's take like terms. So here will be S remaining here. This one has a plus. We will take it down here. It will become minus 0.2S equal to, this one is here minus C. When it goes here, it becomes C. Right? And that's not all. There is a 1 here. So it means S is common. S is common. 1 minus 0.2, which is the same thing as C. So it means that 1 minus 0.2 will give you 0.8. So it becomes 0.8. 0.8 S is equal to C. Okay? What are we even asked to find? We are asked to find their unit selling prices. So we need to know the cost. We need to know the cost. When we find the cost, what is S? Our S is simply C divided by 0.8. So when we know the cost, we divide the cost by 0.8. So now let's look at the costs. This is alpha, beta. This is cost components. So this is material costs. Now they said material is, if the unit material, okay, now this is 400 per unit. 400 per unit. So this is 400. Why this is 100? 100. Then this is number of units. This is 120,000. This is 120,000. You multiply 120,000 multiplied by 400. That's 48 million. 48 million. 48 million. This is going to be 12 million. Yeah, 12 million. That's material costs. Labor costs. Labor is 500, 125. So this is 500, 125. Then labor hours. What's our labor hours the other time? Labor hours. 2, 4, and 3,000. 2, 4, and 3,000. Labor hours. This is 2, 4, 3,000. So here, this is per units. Okay. I will need to divide. I will need to multiply this, and then any answer I get, I will need to divide by 120. 120. So that will give me my labor cost. So let's do it. This is 5,500 times 2, 4 divided by 120,000. That will give me 10,000. And let's do the other one here. 125 times 3 million divided by 120,000. Is 3,125. $3,125. Then the next thing we'll talk here is overhead costs. Overhead costs we calculated the other time. Two, 26, 17, 300. 26, 17, 300. Let's take it there. 23, 17, okay. 23, 17, 300. Then the other one is sorry, a moment, I'm having issue with my mouse. Ten 71. Okay, 10, 7, 10, 700. Right, so this is your total overhead. So this is your total costs. Total costs. Let's have them. $48 million, which is this, plus 10,000 plus 2,317,300. That gives us 50,327,300. 53,27,300. I'm having an issue with my mouse, it's just writing. $53,327. $300. Now this is the costs. So when I divide this by 0.8, I will have my sales. If I divide this by 0.8, like we determined, I have 62,909,125. 62,909,125. $62,909,125. Now, if I divide this by 120,000, I'll get my sales price per unit. So let me divide this by 120,000. I'll be selling at 524.24. $524.24, which is like saying 524 naira is per unit. So let's do the same thing here. $12 million plus 3,125 plus 10 million 710,700 gives me 22,713,825. So 22,713,825. I will now need to divide by 0.8. Divide by 0.8 according to our formula. So this is like 28,932. Sorry, 28,392,281. Oh, 281. Having issue with my mouse. Now I will have to divide this by 120. So I will divide by 120,000. That will give me 236.60. To 36.60, which feels like 237. So that's your selling price. If this question is asked this way, that's how you are going to solve them. That's 25 marks in the bag for you. So that's how we are going to be solving the absorption costing and activity-based costing. So you're seeing in the main points here, absorption costing is traditional costing that uses only labor hours as its only way to get the overhead absorption rates. Whereas the ABC uses each driver rate. To find each driver rate, you need to know the cost for each cost driver divided by its cost activity to get the cost driver rate. And as many as there are activities, that is the much cost driver rate you're going to find. And these are ways of getting costs of overhead. And in this question, we got the cost of overhead, and we are now bringing the material cost and the labor costs, which are did I do something right? Wow, I didn't do something right. Material costs and labor costs. Oh, I did something wrong. I did something wrong. Okay? I did something wrong. 400 and 500. I'll change it now. This is 400. This is 500. This is 500. Then here, 100, 125. So here is 100. 25. That means I have to recalculate this. This one was correct. So let me recalculate this. 500 times 120,000. 60 million. So this is going to be 60 million. So it's good to look at 60 million. Okay. Here was correct. 125 times 3 million divided by this is going to be correct. This is the only one I need to adjust. 100 multiplied by 24,000 divided by 120. 20,000. That will give me 2,000. Yeah, that's going to be 2,000. Okay. So I'm going to recalculate again. It's 48,200. So 2,000 is here plus 48 million plus 2,317,300 50. Okay, this was 48 million, right? Okay, let's see what we got here. 50, 319, 300, 319, 300, 319. Almost the same thing. 50, 319. In the exam, don't go and rewrite this thing again because it will be wasting your time. Now divided by 0.862, 899,125, 899,125. Now divide by 120. 120,000. 524.15. Still the same 524 we got. Unless we check this other one here, we might get the same thing. Let's recheck. Okay, so we have 60 million plus 3,125 plus 10,710,700. That would be 70,713,825. So that would be 70. 70. And let's divide by 0.8. Divide by 0.8. That gives me 88. So everything here is just 8. Just 8 here. Divided by 120. Seven 36.60. Is 7. So that's just the difference. So we've come to the end of our class for today. And please go through these intense workings and familiarize yourself with absorption, costing, and ABC. And try solving as many questions as you can on this topic. If you have any issues, feel free to reach out to me. By next week, we are going to take another topic, which is an interesting one. We'll see a past question on how to solve that, and that will suffice. So once again, I say thank you and do have a lovely day. I don't know if you have any question at this point. Please feel free to ask your question. You can unmute, ask your question. I'll be glad to answer them.
I don't have questions.
I didn't get you?
I don't have questions.
Okay, no problem. So we are coming to the end of the class for today. You are going to get your recording by tomorrow. So take care and do have a nice day.
I appreciate.
All right.